There are some mysteries that seem to be woven into the very fabric of our world. They cling to the highest peaks and hide in the deepest shadows. One of the greatest of these is the legend of the Yeti. For centuries, stories of a giant ape-like creature have echoed down from the Himalayas. It's a tale of a shaggy beast, a wild man of the snows, leaving tantalizing clues of its existence but never quite stepping into the light. This isn't just a monster story. It's a profound question mark hanging over the most formidable mountain range on Earth. The allure of the Yeti is magnetic, drawing in adventurers, scientists, dreamers alike, all asking the same question: what is really out there? The quest for the Yeti is more than a simple monster hunt. It's a journey into the unknown, a challenge to our understanding of the natural world. The Himalayas are one of the last truly wild places on our planet. They are a vertical wilderness of rock and ice, vast and largely unexplored. In such an environment, it feels like anything could be possible. Long before Western explorers arrived with their cameras and ice axes, the people of the Himalayas had their own stories. They didn't call the creature the Yeti. That name came later. To them it was known by many names. Meto Kangmi, Man-Bear Snowman. This wasn't a friendly, cartoonish beast. The creature of legend was a powerful, often feared entity of the high passes. It was said to be a nocturnal wanderer, a muscular, ape-like being covered in dark, shaggy hair that walked upright on two legs. It was a solitary creature, a symbol of the wild, untamable power of the mountains themselves. These local beliefs are deeply embedded in the spiritual and cultural landscape of the region. The Yeti wasn't just an animal. It was often seen as a guardian of the mountains, a supernatural force to be respected and avoided. Some stories paint it as a harbinger of bad luck, its whistle-like call a warning of impending storms or disaster. The legend of the Yeti exploded onto the world stage in the 20th century, thanks to the intrepid explorers, mountaineers who pushed into the heart of the Himalayas. While whispers had reached the West earlier, it was a 1921 expedition that truly ignited the fire. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Barry, leading a British reconnaissance mission to Mount Everest, discovered large, unusual tracks in the snow. His Sherpa guides immediately identified them as belonging to the Meto Kangmi. When a journalist, Henry Newman, interviewed the expedition members, he mistranslated the name, coining the much catchier term, abominable snowman. The name stuck, and a global sensation was born, painting a picture of a monstrous beast haunting the slopes of Everest. The most iconic piece of evidence, however, came 3 decades later. In 1951, the mountaineer Eric Shipton was trekking near the Menlung Glacier when he stumbled upon a series of massive footprints. He took a photograph that would become legendary. The image was crystal clear, a long footprint, broad footprint with distinct toes pressed deep into the snow next to an ice axe for scale. It was unlike any known animal track. Shipton, a respected and no-nonsense climber, was baffled. The photo was published around the world, providing what seemed to be undeniable proof that something very large and very strange was walking through the highest mountains on Earth. Beyond the compelling stories and legendary footprints, the search for the Yeti has yielded a handful of physical artifacts. These are the tangible clues, the pieces of the puzzle that we can hold, test, and analyze. Over the years, adventurers and researchers have collected supposed Yeti hairbone fragments, mummified remains. Perhaps the most famous of these are the Yeti scalps housed in the Kumjung Monastery, Pangbosh Monastery. For centuries, these conical, reddish-brown artifacts were presented as genuine relics, physical proof of the creature revered by the local communities. They became must-see objects for any expedition serious about tracking down the truth. Hair samples have also been a recurring form of evidence. Collected from trees, rocks, or locations of alleged sightings, these strands of hair have offered the tantalizing possibility of a definitive DNA match. For example, the 1954 Daily Mail expedition brought back hairs that were analyzed by experts. The results were ambiguous. Some suggested they belonged to a bear or other known animal, while others couldn't be definitively identified. This pattern of uncertainty has defined much of the physical evidence. Then there are the footprints, the most frequent and visually striking evidence of all. From Shipton's iconic 1951 photo to countless other tracks found by climbers and locals. These prints are remarkably consistent in their description, larger than a human foot, broad, and with a distinct big toe that is sometimes described as opposable. Skeptics argue that these prints are easily explained. They suggest they could be the tracks of a known animal, like a bear, distorted as the snow melts and refreezes. It's a plausible explanation, but it doesn't fully account for every clear, well-defined print found in fresh snow. As technology advanced, the search for the Yeti moved from the mountaineer's spyglass to the scientist's microscope. The advent of DNA analysis in the late 20th and early 21st centuries promised to finally solve the mystery once and for all. Researchers could now take those ambiguous hair samples' supposed relics and ask them a very direct question: what animal did you come from? This new frontier in the investigation brought a wave of excitement. Finally, the tools existed to move beyond speculation and get to the hard biological facts. The era of genetic testing was set to provide the ultimate verdict on the wild man of the snows. One of the most comprehensive studies was led by geneticist Brian Sykes from the University of Oxford in 2014. His team collected and tested over 30 hair samples attributed to the Yeti samples attributed to other anomalous primates from around the world. The results were a bombshell for many believers. Every single sample from the Himalayas that yielded viable DNA came back as a match for a known animal. Most intriguingly, 2 of the samples were a perfect genetic match for an ancient polar bear jawbone found in Svalbard, Norway, dating back over 40,000 years. The scientific findings create a fascinating dichotomy. On one side, the data-driven conclusion: physical evidence points overwhelmingly to bears. Left, traditional Yeti illustration. Right, large Himalayan brown bear. Genetic analysis, the gold standard, has repeatedly identified supposed Yeti relics as known species. From that view, the mystery is solved. The Yeti becomes a myth born from glimpses of reclusive bears, maybe standing on hind legs, leaving distorted tracks in melting snow. Logical, evidence-based, fitting our understanding of nature, a cryptid replaced by a known impressive animal. On the other side of the mountain, the legend persists. For Himalayan people, the Yeti is not a bear. They know bears and describe something else. Bipedal, ape-like, different behaviors. A distinct whistling call. True believers say absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. They point out science has tested only a handful of relics. Perhaps none came from a genuine Yeti. It could be intelligent, elusive, living in inaccessible terrain. This highlights a tension: science versus anecdote. The Yeti legend, a composite of bears and the tantalizing possibility of something more. Whether or not the Yeti is real, its fame is undeniable. The abominable snowman has journeyed far from the icy slopes of the Himalayas to become a global superstar. The creature's pop culture breakthrough can be traced back to the media frenzy of the 1950s. Newspapers, magazines, and the mysterious beast became a household name. This fascination quickly bled into entertainment. One of the earliest and most memorable appearances was in the 1957 horror film, The Abominable Snowman, which portrayed the creature not as a mindless monster, but as an intelligent being trying to protect its hidden world from human intrusion, a theme that would recur for decades. Over time, the Yeti's image began to soften. The terrifying monster of the high peaks was gradually tamed and domesticated for mass consumption. Perhaps the most famous example is the gentle bumbling Bumble from the 1964 television special, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This character transformed the fearsome cryptid into a lovable, if misunderstood, giant. This trend continued across cartoons, commercials, and movies. The Yeti became a friendly mascot for ski resorts, a character in video games, and the star of animated films like Smallfoot and Abominable, where the narrative is often flipped, and the humans are the ones to be feared. So, after trekking through ancient legends, following in the footsteps of explorers, and peering through the lens of a microscope, where do we stand on the question of the Yeti? The truth is, we stand on uncertain ground. We are left with a collection of compelling stories, baffling evidence, and conflicting interpretations. Science has presented a strong case, suggesting the legend is a cultural tapestry woven from encounters with Himalayan bears. Yet, the legend refuses to die. The eyewitness accounts persist, and the sheer conviction of those who believe they have seen something extraordinary cannot be entirely discounted. The mystery of the Yeti is like an unclimbed peak. We can see it from a distance, we can map its slopes, but we haven't yet stood on its summit. Perhaps the real value of the Yeti legend isn't in finding a final answer. Perhaps its power lies in the questions it forces us to ask, and the journey it inspires. The story is a celebration of curiosity itself. The legend endures because it embodies the spirit of adventure. The Yeti remains an enigma, a ghost in the snow, a whisper on the wind. And for those of us who believe the greatest discoveries are still out there, that is exactly as it should be. The search continues.